Test, test, test. Test. Okay, let me lower the sound a bit. Okay. Okay, it's been 10 years since my last stream, I guess. But we're back. And this time, I'm gonna be doing a review, not of a video game, because I actually haven't played anything lately, but of an anime that I watched recently. I wanted to... Oh, forgot about this. Need to take out the sound here. This is Hit Radio, Love Media Station. Okay, don't want to get the channel taken down yet, so I'm gonna be talking while I do some side content in on GTA 3. By the way, what an annoying game to actually platinum this one. Seriously, you have so much missable stuff and so much boring side content, to be honest. Rockstar really likes shoving in slop to make you waste your time in these games, don't they? My god. And seriously, like, what the hell was this remake, man? This remake over here really just proves that Rockstar of old really is that a shell of their former self. Like, what in the world was this remake over here? The graphics are horrendous. They literally spent all this time making a goddamn remake. 2 games that they released in the last 10 years, 3 of which, the trilogy is basically remasters, really. They look like absolute garbage. My god. Absolute joke. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing some of this stuff in the meantime, while I talk a little bit about the anime. I also have no thoughts written down either, so there's not gonna be any structure to this video. I'm just gonna be a little bit me rambling about the stuff that I remember, really. In the end, I'm also gonna talk a little bit about another one, though. That other anime really doesn't have a lot to discuss, which is why it's kind of just gonna be in the at the tail end of this stream, since there's nothing really particularly interesting to mention there. So yeah, starting with Arslan Senki. For anyone who hasn't watched it, doesn't know what I'm talking about. Arslan Senki, really, it's basically somewhat of an historical anime that focuses on I'm getting destroyed here. Focuses on the fantastical land of Pars, and there's kind of like an interpretation of ancient Persia. I'm pretty sure from what I read that Arslan Senki is actually based on a historical novel. The author actually based the story on an historical novel that was written in Persia. So I don't know how different that historical novel is, when it was written. I don't really know anything about that, so I'm just gonna focus on the anime itself. The anime kind of starts introducing us to the Crown Prince of Pars. The Crown Prince of Pars, which is the main character of the show. And honestly, one of the worst aspects of the show itself, to be honest. We get to see him, you know, training with the Prime Minister, who is also kind of like the guy that was, you know, raising him and stuff. And yeah, I mean, to not ramble too much, the story basically starts, really, we get presented with the main character's family, his father, who is the king of Pars, and his mother, who is the empress. And from the beginning you can clearly tell that, you know, the relationship between the main character and his family is not exactly the greatest. Within basically being neglected by both for reasons unknown to us and honestly unexplained yet, as in yet in the anime. We don't really know why they act the way they do towards him. It's never really properly explained. They kind of give maybe somewhat of an inkling of a reason, but it was never properly told to us exactly whatever, well, why his parents act the way they do towards him, but whatever. This is basically the defining trait of the main character at the beginning, that is his relationship with his parents and him not feeling adequate for the position that he finds himself in as Crown Prince, and as someone who's going to have to succeed the kingdom. It's something of a source of somewhat of a source of anguish for the main character. So yeah, going a little bit further on, we find ourselves in the middle of a battle. The anime actually starts with a battle that the Kingdom of Pars actually wins, but the real beginning of the story is in another battle. We start off against the kingdom. The first battle shown in the anime is against the kingdom called Lusitania. I don't know. They're supposed to be based around Arabs. I mean, historically it was also the Arabs who kind of invaded Persia as well, so I'm assuming it's supposed to be based around Arabs. But it's kind of hard to tell. Since, you know, the design aesthetics make them look a lot closer to, you know, Christians and, you know, knights and crusaders rather than actual Arabs. So I don't know what the author was really thinking here, if he was trying to kind of deviate from real life. Especially with the way they act. It's really unnecessary to have any sort of real life comparison, the Lusitanian kingdom. And what we know from the outside is that they're considered savages by the kingdom of Pars, and they're considered religious zealots. That's basically that introduction. They get defeated in the first episode, basically. But again, that's really just the setup. In the later episodes, we get another battle against them. That's when the anime really starts. In that battle, we get to see that, you know, the Kingdom of Pars is actually an arrogant prick who doesn't really listen to his advisors, and that ends up leading to a terrible outcome in the battle, where they get absolutely destroyed, particularly because one of the generals betrays the king and sides the Lusitanian army. Also, assumedly feeding the Lusitanian army information, we actually get to see a little bit of a masked man in the army, which presumably is the main villain, which, yeah, it ends up being the main villain. And he's the one who actually, who is behind, basically, the entire plan. This fucking thing is terrible, man. What the hell? What the hell, dude? Whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'm rambling too much and I'm being really slow here. Get that? Let me just get a little bit faster. So yeah, in the second battle that we see in the anime, the king is betrayed in a battle against the Lusitanian army, and the entire army is crushed. So basically, Pars loses the battle. The main character himself is in the battlefield and barely survives with his life, being saved by one of the generals. That ends up being one of the important characters throughout the story. And Lusitania takes over the capital and so on and so forth. And in the end, it's basically the generic plotline of, you know, an outside entity takes over the capital, and the young main character, who is still a young prince with no experience whatsoever, has to give up his life of comfort and be thrown into the middle of a fray, fighting life and death battles against the odds to restore order and the rightful rule in the kingdom. It's a very basic plotline. We see it 1,000 times in multiple stories, but yeah, that's about the gist of it. That's how the story starts, really. And overall, I mean, it's generic, but it's fine. I think it works. I don't think it needs to, the setup needs to be particularly stronger than that. I'm not gonna focus a lot more on, you know, analyzing each episode, because again, as we've clearly seen, I cannot stop myself from Run. What is going on with this aim, man? Well, whatever. So yeah, let me start by talking about the positives and the negatives of the anime. I'm not gonna go too deep into spoilers. I mean, if you want to watch it, you should watch it yourself. It's a pretty underappreciated anime, and after watching it, I do understand, and I do feel like, you know, I feel like it's rated just perfectly. I mean, it's pretty niche, it has some cult following of sorts, but overall I don't think it's good enough to warrant, you know, mainstream appeal, mainstream success, in my opinion. I think it has a lot of flaws, and I think it's perfectly rated. It's not one of those hidden gems that more people absolutely should watch. I think it's fine the way it is. I don't really think it's an anime that, you know, deserves the highest praises, because it does a lot of things wrong, even with this basic premise. He does a lot of things wrong. Starting with the good things, I guess. Well, there's not really a lot I can, you know, confidently praise this anime for. I mean, it does a lot of things average, and it does a lot of things badly. I mean, it doesn't do a lot of things well, though. Come on, man. So I guess the things it does well, I mean, I guess the adventure is fine. Going around the kingdom, meeting a lot of different places, I guess that's fine. The world is fairly well thought out, I'd say. the geography of things. Definitely, though, obviously, this thing is based on a real novel, so I can't really, just say the author of the manga is the one who really gets the credits for that. So it's from the original piece. I guess the author maybe adapted some things here and there. I don't know. I have not read the original novel to comment on that, but I'd say the geography is fine, the geopolitics is fine. You have interesting kingdoms all around. Yeah, I'd say it's fine overall. And I mean, the soundtrack is okay. There's some decent ones, though it does get kind of repetitive after a while. There's some good set pieces, some decent set pieces, I guess. In terms of action, I mean, overall, I'm gonna talk about in the bad stuff. The animation is not exactly great, but there are some moments which I have to give them props. They do get some set pieces correctly. They're pretty nice to watch. Some of the sword fighting sections, they're decent usually, though it's reserved for the big battles with the big bad guy. And yeah, especially on the ground. I mean, fights on horses, which are the most common types of fights. Consider that, the army of the main character's country is basically famed for their cavalry, so you have a lot of cavalry set pieces. They're not great, but usually when you get a big climactic battle on the ground, they're usually decent, I'd say. And that's probably as much as I can praise it. I mean, overall, the rest of the story feels very average and generic. It's not really scratching the itch, and it's, in my opinion, flooded with issues, the way this writing works. And we can, with this story, we can start with the most basic and obvious one, the animation and the art style. I mean, let's start with the art. The art style sucks, which is funny because it's extremely generic, the art style. Which is funny considering how unique the original art style was. By the original, I'm talking about the original anime of Arslan Senki, because this anime is actually an interesting one and has been rebooted several times. It's had several anime and manga adaptations. And the original anime actually had an interesting art style, kind of unique. The characters look unique. You go to the remake of the anime, and it just looks like complete generic garbage. It really does not even stay in your mind even for a little bit. I mean, I don't know, I guess it was supposed to be more realistic. Honestly, I don't even think you wanted a more realistic movie, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's just completely forgettable. And to make matters worse, the animation is also not good. In fact, I'll venture to say it's actually, on average, terrible, with the exception of those few moments that I talked about earlier, where you have like 2 or 3 sword battles that are actually decently animated and well coordinated. The animation is usually very average, and there's moments where it's absolutely terrible, particularly when you get the CGI 3D troops moving around. I mean, literally a joke. Luckily, it doesn't really last a lot. It doesn't last very long. The CGI set pieces, they usually are fairly quick. They usually are finished fairly quickly. But yeah, it's really not a great look when they appear. It's completely jarring to look at that thing. But even in the 2D animation pieces, it's just not good looking most of the time. As I was talking about, most of the battles, especially on horse, suck. The animation is really sketchy in a lot of places. It doesn't flow well. Overall, it's not exactly the greatest. In terms of sound, I already talked about. Yes, it has some decent music, but it does get repetitive after a while. They really need to go ahead and get a bigger variety of music, honestly. It definitely feels like they start repeating. They have like 2 or 3 OSTs which are fine at the beginning, and it's just start getting old after being reused for the entire story. And well, the plot itself is, I guess it's fine, as I already talked about. It's reclaiming the capital and the kingdom from the invading forces. In this case, from the country called Lusitania, which basically took over the country, kidnapped the king, and has him jailed in a cell, and took over the capital, really. They didn't take over the entire country, but they took over the capital and most of the southern parts of the kingdom. The plot is fine. The execution, I'm not exactly sure, since, you know, the anime never really goes very far into the story itself, so I can't really analyze how well the plot unfolds afterwards. I guess it's acceptable the way it unfolds in this one. At the very least in the first season. The second season is a different thing that I'm going to talk about in the end, but the first season is fine the way the plot unfolds. The main issue with the story are actually the characters that make, honestly, the show borderline unwatchable at times. And we can start with the main character. The main character is the most boring cardboard of a character I've ever seen in my life. Besides the really, the familial angst that he has with his family, there isn't really anything interesting at all about him. There's a little bit of a revelation later about some stuff relating to the succession and the main villain of the story that makes him have somewhat of an arc. But even then, it doesn't make up for the fact that the main character is extremely boring. Zero charisma, has no ideas of his own, has no objective, has nothing really going for him. And the way the story just continuously continuously tries to make us, the audience, think that this character over here is the greatest thing that has ever set foot on Earth, with every single character just bowing down and basically licking the sole of his feet. It gets extremely jarring and annoying, since he doesn't even deserve most of that. I mean, the main character himself is constantly saying how he needs to improve himself, and the story and the characters around him constantly shut down any situation and any possibility of improvement by basically just carrying throughout the entire story. And yes, I know that, what the story is trying to say here, that, a king doesn't need to do stuff by himself, that he needs to let his subjects do the work for him, and this job is just leading everyone else. I know, but it makes for a very weak storytelling. It doesn't make a storytelling compelling if you just constantly telling the main character that he does not need to improve himself and just needs to smile and wave. It's not compelling storytelling in the slightest. Also, the main character doesn't really, showcase any development when it comes to leadership skills either. He doesn't go around selecting people that he feels that have talent. He doesn't really go around recruiting people. He doesn't go around getting the people or his armies the morale that they need in situations that are irreversible or when they're in the back foot. Particularly because they're never in the back foot anyway, which is I'm going to talk about later. Like, the main character doesn't really lead anything either. He doesn't make any decisions. He doesn't make tough decisions, tough choices. The plot just bends over backwards for him. So he never really has to be tested. His leadership never has to be put to the test either. And overall, just boring. Like, what does the main character want to do when he gets to the throne? He has a very generic idea. Well, I want to end slavery. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, sure. And you want to end slavery, and what else? What else do you want to do? Is that it? Is that your government plan? Is that your entire ambition as a king, to change the king, just ending slavery? That's it? You don't have anything else you want to do? There's no financial or economic change you want to bring to the country? You don't want to bring, I don't know, technology, development, redistribute royal rights, take away a bit of the power of the nobles, give them back to the people? Is that nothing? You just end slavery and that's it. That's the entire basis of the main character's goal in this story. That's as much as his ambition goes. Like, that is so pathetic, man. That is actually pathetic. Like, the story tries to go ahead and, you know, pretend that this character is one of these great visionary kings that wants to bring crazy change to the country that was stagnant for a while, that seemed, you know, prosperous on the surface, but was stagnant and rotting and corrupt on the bottom, and the only thing it wants to change is end slavery. Like, seriously, that's as much ambition as you can have. And again, this is one of the main issues of this that I have with the story, is the fact that the author tries to go ahead and talk about all these revolutionary ideas and bringing change and all of that, but the scope of the ambition of the author, that the author ingrains the characters with, is extremely limited. You don't go beyond the surface level issues. I mean, it doesn't go beyond the issue of slavery at all. It doesn't do anything beyond that. Which just shows that not only is the author not ambitious in the slightest, this entire story is very lackluster and shallow when it comes to, you know, political and economic exploration of, you know, governance. It's extremely shallow when it comes to that. Well, the main character is one big issue. Again, he has no charisma and completely uninteresting. I also hate his design. Like, why exactly? I always hate when anime do this shit about making the main character just look like a woman. Like, why exactly are you making the guy look like a woman, man? And I know beauty standards in Japan are different, but come on, man. Like, it's so embarrassing looking at that, man. Why are you making the main character look like a woman? Like, dude, seriously. But yeah, whatever. Talking about the side characters, are another big issue in the story. Simply put, because they're completely overpowered. I mean, the entire plot bends over backwards for them, and the main character by proxy, because again, the people that he recruits are the most overpowered, ridiculous heroes in the kingdom possible. So it basically, again, never has to be put to the test either. I mean, a lot of the problems the main characters stem from the side characters being ridiculously overpowered and the world bending over backwards for them. The main issue of this is actually the strategist called Narcissus in this anime, but it's not as if all the others are good. I mean, Narcissus is really bad, because I'll talk about Narcissus later. Let's start with the lowest offenders, that are, you know, the fighters. The main character is basically accompanied by 4 main subordinates, and then 2 more which are, you know, secondary subordinates to him, but 4 main ones which are the most important ones. The strategist and 3 others. The other 3 are mostly involved in fighting, really, so that plot armor is usually strictly related to fighting, with the exception of one of them called Give, which is actually the best character in the story and the only one who actually makes the story interesting, because it's the only one that is interesting seeing on screen. He's actually the only character that has, you know, multiple faces to him, that has, you know, contradicting motivations, that doesn't really just bend over backwards for the main character instantly after talking with him once. Is the only character that has somewhat of you know, a way of thinking that is, you know, independent of what the main character says. He thinks for himself mostly. He's not really being led around. I mean, the strategist kind of does as well, but when you really look at it, the main character and the strategist kind of think about it the same, about everything the same way, really, which is why the strategist follows the main character. In fact, the strategist kind of just really leads the main character into thinking about every issue the same way he does. But yeah, Give is the only actual interesting character. Obviously, he's still overpowered. He doesn't really have as many ridiculous moments as the others. Yes, he's really strong, a really strong fighter, and his main job is usually going undercover and going in missions. And his main plot armor is basically surviving against the odds in these situations. Honestly, he's the one that has the least amount of ridiculous moments like this overall throughout the story, and is the most interesting character. So overall, a positive for the story. The other 3, though, I'm not gonna be as nice to them. The second main character of the support cast is like a priestess from some random temple that is basically an archer and has like 100% accuracy in her shots and whatever. I mean, we don't even really know why exactly she wanted to join the main character in the first place. Like, the author makes up a reason, but honestly feels kind of feeble to even see that sort of loyalty coming from her, but whatever. She's also pretty boring. There's nothing really to her. We never really get to explore anything about her. She barely even talks throughout most of the story. The story only really gets her when they need to go ahead and, have an arrow shot to someone's head. Yeah, she's pretty boring. There's nothing really to her. I guess she can drink, which I guess is a quirk. Not really character writing, but yeah. And well, she was mostly fine until the end of the final season, when she basically, I saw someone commenting on this, she basically turns into Neo from the Matrix and starts basically being invulnerable to arrows for some reason. They basically enter into a completely enclosed space where they have an enemy army on balconies all around them shooting arrows. Basically was an impossible place to invade, really, unless you had a lot, like a really big number advantage. They basically were in an enclosed space that was shooting all around them, and the girl just enters the space and just yells some bullshit like, well, arrows actually cannot hit me because I have the protection of the winds, and she just enters and all of the arrows miss her. Like, the entire crew, the entire enemy army just becomes stormtroopers failing to hit an arrow against someone who is literally not even 100 meters away. She's like 10 meters away from them, and they all miss. And obviously she pulls her bow and starts basically killing everyone while they all miss her for some reason, like completely beyond idiotic, that entire scene. Like, I was absolutely baffled by what the author tried to pull there. Like, why exactly would you even get yourself into that situation? Why not just not put that situation there? Why not just make an entire different scenario where it's plausible that they could, get through without needing this complete idiotic thing? Because the author wants to have its cake and eat it too. He wants to have a realistic depiction of the world, and then he comes up with this ridiculous power scaling, superpowers. I'm gonna talk about magic a little bit later, but yeah. Also, funnily enough, even though she supposedly had the power of the wind to deflect every arrow, the arrows really don't hit any of her friends that are around her. They just decide not to shoot them. They shoot every single arrow at the one that is invulnerable to them instead of shooting at the people around her who supposedly don't have any of those protections. I mean, I guess very convenient, yeah, sure. So yeah. So it's just basically pretty boring and as ridiculous, most like that. Then we have the main subordinate of the main character, which is like the general that's saved from the first battlefield. And he is just your generic strong general who basically can take 100 men by himself. And again, with him, I kind of could hold my suspense of disbelief, though it's very inconsistent. One time he's able to go ahead and take on 100 men, another time he's basically struggling to kill some random hobo who doesn't feel any pain. Because, yeah, he just... okay. It's very inconsistent. Overall, though, he's probably the one I have the least problems with. You don't even see him taking on, 50 people by himself. They just say he can. He never really does. Though he basically beats every single general ever. I mean, it's funny that, this black general is like the strongest general ever. There's ever really anyone that can rival him at all. With the exception of the main villain, of course, because the main villain can never be defeated early. And it's really funny because the main villain is the one. You have generals from different countries that have spent their entire lives on the battlefield, and their father compared to this black swordsman. And yet, this main villain, who never even set foot on a battlefield until the start of the story, who basically barely trained, and never had any real life experience or anything, is suddenly the strongest swordsman he's ever faced, and he cannot beat. I mean, I guess that's anime logic for you. Like, he's the one that is the least offensive, really. I guess it's fine overall. He's also the most boring. He doesn't really have any aspirations of his own. His whole shtick is basically being the most loyal dog of the main character, and that's it. And then we get to Narcissus, which is really the crux of the issues I have with the entire story, because he basically makes everything meaningless. I mean, he is absolutely the biggest Mary Sue, in this case Gary Stu, in the entire story. It's actually ridiculous how the plot just bends over backwards for him. It's actually insane. He's a strategist and a swordsman. Obviously he's a master swordsman as well. He couldn't just have been a strategist that is just bad at sword fighting. So at the very least he has a weakness. No, he's actually a genius as well as sword fighting. In fact, one of the strongest sword fighters in the entire story. Not as strong as the other side characters, but general level. He's one of the strongest around the entire world. Of course. And then, I mean, it's not even the swordplay that is the issue, though. That's just another thing to really, hit home how much of a Mary Sue he is, because he couldn't even have been bad at swords fighting, yes, great. The main issue with him, though, is his fucking strategist, which, for the detriment of the story, work with no issues every single time. Every single time. They just work without any problems. And a lot of times, the main character's crew ends up finding themselves in situations where they're completely outnumbered. And yet, the strategies that he makes always fall into place. He has not had a single defeat in the entire story. He has won every single time. He has won with differences, like they had 5 people fighting against a crew of like 100 or 200 men, and they won with 5 people fighting against 200 or 100 or 200 men. They won. They managed to win. They won fighting an enemy that was like twice their size, 100,000 versus 50,000. They won. And this is the thing, though. It never feels like they're even put into on the back foot either, because every plan that Narcissus makes always works perfectly. The enemy commanders become complete idiots when facing him with no thought. I mean, every single commander is a complete dumbass. Or things just happen to fall to in ways that are convenient for him. Or even worse, he just ends up making stuff up and it actually happening. And this is the worst offender, because he actually makes some plans with knowledge that he should not have even had. This one was actually one that took me out of the story entirely. Because there's one of the plans that he makes that he should not by any account have been able to make, because he has absolutely no information that should have allowed him to reach those conclusions. But yeah, overall, this guy really literally just ruins the story. And I mean, he's also the one who basically has the entire ideology of the main character, so everything he says the main character goes along with. He's the one that the main character, whenever he's faced with an issue, just turns to the strategist and have him deal with it. Doesn't think for himself at all. Also, by the way, he's not just a good military strategist, he's also an incredible political strategist as well. I mean, it's again a great master swordsman, master general on the battlefield, master political strategist. Like, the guy is everything. He goes ahead and manipulates everything. Everything happens to fall exactly in how he wants it to. Like, for instance, in the one where he fights 5 men versus 100, the entire enemy command structure just becomes completely retarded. Completely stupid decision making. Like, the enemy commander decides to go ahead and send his men, who are on horses, by the way, decides to tell all of his men to go up a cliff to catch the main character. Like, are you actually kidding me? They're going up cliffs on horses. Like, what kind of stupidity is this, man? Also, the whole thing is that they didn't know how many men the enemy had. I mean, yeah, 5 people making the enemy believe they have hundreds of them. Yeah, sure. I'm sure that works very well in the real world. I'm sure that would be you'd be very able to make something like that happen. Yeah, I mean, the strategist and another guy start, getting in the rear and attacking them. They never even noticed them because, yeah, they're invisible. I guess they didn't even notice that those guys were attacking them from behind. Like, it's so you have to watch the scene for yourself. It's not only is it completely ridiculous that nobody notices that 2 people are attacking them from behind. It's completely ridiculous, the decision making from the enemies. Instead of, being rational and thinking things through, he goes ahead and tells all his men to go up a cliff with the horse. I mean, he knows it. If he thinks that he's surrounded by multiple people, why in the world would he tell his men to go up cliffs? He should have told his men to go either one way or the other if he thinks he's surrounded, to break through one or the other place. They're in the middle of a ravine, basically. You would have told his men to go either one way or another to break through the encirclement. But instead, he doesn't give any orders to his men besides go up the cliff and capture the enemy commander. Completely idiotic. Then there's the fact that none of them notice that there's 2 individuals in the middle of them that are not even wearing that outfit, so it's not even that excuse that they're wearing the same outfits. They captured someone, they're wearing the same outfits. No, they're wearing completely normal outfits, and they don't notice that there's people in the middle of them attacking them, and there's only 2 of them. Nobody notices that. I mean, it's just completely stupid in every way, shape, and form. And I mean, the worst one is absolutely the one that happened in his campaign in India. That was impossible to have happened with the knowledge and the facts that the strategist had on his hand. I mean, I would have to go ahead and tell the entire context here, but to make things short, the main character was helping one of the Indian crown princes take over the crown for himself. It was a civil war. It was that crown prince versus his older brother, who had basically control of the capital, and was the main power in the region there. His main brother was the main successor. So, and they were getting through a fort. They had to go through a fort to continue towards the capital, to wage the final battle. And to go through the fort without really having to take it, the strategist decides to send an envoy towards the fort to convince them that to let them through. And basically he sends one of the main character's friends, or main subordinates, and the guide that they were given by the brother. The brother basically sent a guide to guide them through the country. The brother, in this case, one of the Indian brothers fighting for the throne, sent the main, because the armies were moving separately. You had the army of the main character with like 10,000 men, was moving separately from the second crown prince's. The second prince's army was moving separately. He basically gave them a guide, an Indian guide, to help them move through the country that they had never been in before. The thing is, though, the guy that prince sent was actually not loyal to the prince. It was actually a double agent working for the older brother that was sent there to gather information, act as a spy. The second prince did not know this, which means that, Narcissus, the strategist, also had no way of knowing that this guy was ever gonna be a spy, even if he suspected that this dude over here was working for the second prince. He had no way of knowing that he was a spy, basically. So, if anything, the only thing he would know is that this guy would act in a way that would put the second prince in advantage, and trying to destroy the Persian army, the Persian army, let's say, in this case, was actually not in the best interests of the second prince, because he still needed them to beat his first brother, who had the majority of the forces on the kingdom, yet double the forces of the second brother. So he needed the Persian army. So even if he thought he was not trustworthy, the guy, there's no way you would think ever that he would act in a way to destroy the Persian army. That is a completely ridiculous assumption. And then, yes, once they get there, the main character Savonnet manages to convince the leader of the fort to let them through. But then, as basically the entire thing is agreed upon, the guy acting as a double agent calls the leader of the fort in private and tells him that, you know, the main character's crew is lying and that they're planning on actually going through the fort at night, hidden away, while we're destructive making this deal they're gonna go through. Which again is just a decision that is just baffling. Why in the world would he do that? And I mean, how would the main character even accept that? Because if the fort leader rejected the negotiation, and he found out that the entire army had already passed through, the main character's subordinate would have been killed. You know that, right? Like, how in the world did the main character accept this entire plan? And this entire plan was already, you know, assuming that the guy would disagree, which, again, he literally agreed to the plan, so why... Again, this plan itself is weird. It really feels like it's the author forcing a situation to happen in here. I don't think, based on how the characters work, I mean, the main character will never sacrifice his subordinate to get through the fort. Because, again, the subordinate would end up getting killed. I mean, I guess he could end up surviving with the plot armor of the main characters, but that's not an assumption the main character would make when greenlighting this plan. But yeah, whatever. He tells them that they're, you know, planning on betraying them, whatever, and the fort leader gets enraged and decides to try and stop them immediately. The guy tells them to wait a little bit, and he's gonna tell them the coordinates of the Persian army so that they can strike where it hurts them the most. That would be their logistics, their supplies. They're usually located on the back. He's gonna give them the signal to attack, and they can destroy the supplies and basically ruin the Persian campaign and force them out of the country, really, without the supplies. Which, again, I don't know why they didn't just go through. Why were the Persian army and the second prince's army moving separately again? Why didn't the second prince go with the Persian army? They would have been able to get through the fort without any issues if the second prince was there. The second prince was the fort leader was never going to deny passage to the second prince. So why in the world would... I mean, I guess he could, but it was way less likely to do so. And if he rejected the passage yet, they would have a much easier time taking over the fort with a lot more troops. So again, why exactly were they going separately again? They gave some excuse about, you know, the prince separating areas because he wanted to waste manpower from the Persians. But we could have separated afterwards when they were preparing for battle rather than beforehand. Like, the entire thing is just bogus, really. The entire scenario just feels extremely manufactured. But yeah, then well, the members of the fort alongside the guy decide to put their plan through and attack the supply lines. And they're about to attack the supply lines. The main character's subordinate, which went with the guide to the fort, appears behind them, telling him that he knew that he was actually untrustworthy from the beginning. I mean, okay, yeah, sure, they have a scuffle before that showed that he was a little bit too strong to be just a regular guy, sure, but it still doesn't mean that they knew he was a spy at all, really. I mean, if anything, they would just assume that he was the second prince sending someone to do dirty work for them, spy Persian army for the second prince, not a double agent for the first prince. It's impossible to know based on this information, on the information they have. Not to mention that, again, him acting for the second prince, it's not in the second prince's interest at all to destroy the Persian army here. So again, this entire scenario is completely idiotic under the assumption that he works for the second prince, which is the assumption that they would have to make because they have no information to prove the contrary. And yes, obviously, I mean, the people from the fort attacked the supply lines anyway, even without signal, and they noticed that it was actually a trap run by the strategy of Narcissus, which is so smartly end up exchanging the supply lines with actual people hidden inside to attack them as soon as they get close. Yeah. So how exactly did strategy Narcissus come up with the idea of changing the supply lines? That means that he had to have known that the supply lines would have been attacked. And for him to know that the supply lines would be attacked means that he knew that, you know, his plan would fail. And the only way his plan would fail, really, is if the... By the way, he was already working under the assumption. This is why it's so stupid overall. I mean, for this plan to work, the strategist would have to work under the assumption that the negotiations would be successful. So that you would give them time to... either that they would be successful or that they would fail. Either they... I mean, because if they fail, the people from the fortress are just going to tell them no and prevent them from going in the dead of night and bypass the fort. Which, by the way, bypassing a fort is completely stupid. You're just going to cut off your supply lines in case they turn against you or whatever. So basically, this all works under the assumption that the negotiations would work. So if these negotiations work, I mean, because again, if they just outright rejected his advances, they would have just told them no and prevented them from going in the dead of night for this. But the thing is, he apparently didn't even want to go through dead of night. He wanted to lure the enemy armies to the supply lines to eliminate them. So he had to have known that the guide would betray them first, which okay, fine, that's a fine assumption. Even if it doesn't make any sense, okay, he doesn't trust him, he thinks he's going to betray him. But he also had to have known exactly what he was going to do, that is attacking the supply lines. Which, again, they could have very easily instead just stayed on the fort and fly arrows all towards them. They did not need to do that. But again, this all just falls through because this is working under the assumption that the guide is going to betray them, and that is an impossible assumption to make. Even if he finds him shady, he is not going to outright work towards the destruction of the Persian army, because the second prince needs the Persian army to win the civil war. He was not going to destroy it before it even gets to battle. That is completely stupid. Like, again, this entire section just makes no sense based on what they know. Like, for this to make sense, you would have to have known that the spy, the guide was actually a double agent, and the spy working for the first prince, which is impossible for him to have known. Like, it's completely fucking stupid. And this is what I tell it. I mean, not only are situations extremely manufactured to the point that they don't make any sense when you think twice about them, he ends up using information that he doesn't even know to make his plans. And again, if you're not thinking too deeply, you just think, oh well, what a smart guy, he saw everything coming. When you think about it a little bit more, you start to realize that it doesn't make any sense. Any of this, it just doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot more minor instances of him just rightfully predicting everything is gonna happen to a T, like the enemy commanders acting exactly in the same manner. Like, for instance, he tells us, the audience, that, you know, later on in the fight for India, that if the crown prince, the older prince, decides to split his forces in a certain manner, they basically lose the battle. But if he splits his forces in another way, they basically have a chance. And what do you know? The prince, like a dumbass, splits his forces exactly like the strategist. The strategist predicts. Because yeah, I mean, the main character's army is inside of the fort. They don't need that much people to guard the fort. They don't. They just need to keep them tied there, while he destroys the main force that is the second prince's army and then moves towards the fort. And yet he splits his army into two, 50,000 each. The main character's army has 10,000 people and sends 50,000 people to deal with them. And again, he doesn't even need to deal with them, it just needs to keep them on the fort. He doesn't need 50,000 people there. So yeah, he just splits 50,000 people on each side, and then he basically has a marginal advantage over his brother when he could have had like 70,000 people and a more than double advantage against his brother, and having just 30,000, 25,000 people, keeping the main character's army within the fort. So I mean, yeah, and then there's the contrivances for his strategies, like when they're sieging down a fort, which is shown to be extremely hard most times. I mean, whenever sieging forts goes through, I mean, when it's the main character defending it, everything goes wrong from the attackers, and they just, you know, repel everything. It's the main character, or the main villain, or antagonist. Everything goes well, and they just crush everyone. I mean, it's always like that. I mean, there's an extremely convenient section that basically leads to the fort. Following that is, you know, the main characters finding a secret entrance to the fort. First of all, it's extremely, you know, it's extremely funny how they just find an entire secret entrance towards a fort, like one of the most well-guarded forts in the country. It just happens to have a secret entrance in a mountain. I mean, what makes this worse is that, okay, yeah, sure, maybe I can believe the secret entrance there. The problem is, though, there's already another secret entrance, and there's a big thing about exploring that secret entrance within that same fight. So there's basically two secret entrances. And, I mean, one, okay, believable, two, and one as big as that one, and that's a little bit hard to believe, honestly. It's once again very convenient, but okay, there's a secret entrance. How do they find the secret entrance, you ask? Well, this starts with conveniences from way before that. I mean, there's a specific character that is actually very annoying. This character. That appears actually from the beginning of the story, that ends up in the middle of a fight in the battlefield, ends up losing a battle against some guy and being thrown off the horse. Obviously in anime fashion, whoever dropped her off her horse decides not to kill her, just moves away and leaves her in the middle of the battlefield alone without killing her. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's totally believable. And then, yeah, she just happens to, you know, see in the distance one of the main character's crew members and ends up finding out where their camp is, which all very convenient, right? So she basically decides to rush the camp, which is basically not protected in the slightest for some reason. With like 5 guys, she manages to go breach the camp and get all the way to the main character's tent. Where is the rest of the soldiers? Are there no soldiers protecting the entire camp? Are you actually kidding me? She managed to get through the entire thing with 5 people. Well, whatever. She ends up getting surrounded by all those guys, which, again, the main character tells everyone not to kill her because he's an absolute simp and a cuck. And, I mean, this bitch over here killed a bunch of your soldiers and you're out here protecting her. I mean, what a king you are. My goodness, this is something for the themes that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. This story is so inconsistent in the way it does things. It's so inconsistent in terms of thematics, in terms of emotional reactions, that it's crazy. But yeah, she ends up managing to escape because nobody does anything. The main character tells everyone to not hurt her as well. So she ends up leaving, and what does she do? She runs away and escapes to the fort through the secret entrance. And she does this without even checking if there's anyone following behind her. So she basically just tells the entire enemy that there's an entire secret passage for the fort. And to make matters worse, this secret passage is not guarded by anyone, first of all. Nobody is protecting this massive secret passage that just leads straight to the heart of the fort. There's nobody there. And that knight that, escaped from the main character's camp doesn't tell anyone that there might be people coming through there because she used the secret passage to run away. She doesn't tell anyone to go ahead and fortify the place. And so, of course, the main character send an invasion force through there, which basically enters the place and opens the gates and basically ends the siege. And that is the end of the very expected finale, final battle of the story. The battle sequences are terrible, like absolutely terrible. It just convenience after convenience after convenience. It's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. They are terrible. Then, compared to Kingdom, this is actual trash. When it comes to the battle set pieces, they're absolutely terrible. Strategy is absolutely horrible on all sides. Then yeah, well, the main character ends up winning and whatever. Then the second season, funnily enough, feels like an entire filler season where nothing happens. I mean, the main character's father, the king, managed to escape his imprisonment, yes. And as I said, he started to sweat on the change and eventually broke them off because it started to rust. I mean, I'm not even gonna say anything. And yet the main character is banished by his father, probably because his father doesn't like his son, which at this point, there's some family drama here, amassing so much power, and he banishes him, basically. This is actually a great opportunity. It was actually a good setup to have the main character actually develop himself, actually get to do something by himself, raise a force by himself, actually make decisions alone without being carried by side characters. It's been a perfect opportunity to have a little bit of a change in the story system, in the storytelling, and to have the main character actually become more interesting, more independent, show some growth. And yet, this great chance is instantly squandered, because basically all of these subordinates that were ordered to stay just leave immediately afterwards, and he's once again carried through the entire season by himself. The entire season just feel like the main character doesn't achieve anything really. He goes to a city, deals with the problems there, they just feel like filler problems. He barely even raises a force, and by the end of the story basically get back to the position we were before the season 2 started. The only difference that now the king, the main character's father, is the one with the control over the army. And we barely do anything at all this season. It's extremely bad. The villain is like a joke, man. Like, he's supposed to be the shrewd merchant, and he basically just spills out that he's the one behind the problems of the entire village to the face of the strategies. Like, it's completely idiotic, the entire season. Honestly, terrible season, by the way. Terrible in all accounts. So it literally just feels like a filler season, really. Yeah, talking about themes, the story tries to talk about themes. What the hell, man? What the hell is going on here?
Hey, I know you.
But yeah. Themes, they try to go ahead and tackle some themes, but it fails miserably. Again, it continuously bashes you over the head about slavery bad, I want to end slavery. Okay, sure, you want to end slavery. We got it already. You don't need to retry it again. Only tell me a million times they want to end slavery. And then there's also the thematic of religious zealotry, which the thing is, the religious zealotry is only really applicable to one character in the story, and it's one of the most annoying characters in the story, by the way. It just makes it even worse. And again, the story is just so picky with how he wants the viewers to see things in it. Like, he really doesn't delve deep into the whole theme about, and especially because the main character is a complete loser when it comes to that one specific character, the one that basically led the main character to the secret entrance of the fort. The main character just cannot stand up to her in the slightest. He just shuts up in every interaction he has with her, and can absolutely not talk back at all. Just makes some nice spots. Well, I actually want to, you know, we can all understand each other. While she's basically telling him that, you know, he's a subhuman and he needs to be killed because he doesn't believe in her faith. That's basically what she tells him the entire story, and he just goes, well, actually, I think we can all get along even if we don't believe in some. I mean, complete cuck behavior, really. It's just so wishy-washy. I mean, there's not really a real analysis of what goes on behind the zealotry. In fact, the zealotry itself ends up being portrayed as good, because that Etoile is actually portrayed as the good person in this whole thing, and the bad people are the ones behind using religion for their own benefits. Again, even though she herself tells you to your face that you're a subhuman and need to kill, and need to die, basically, if you don't convert. She's shown as the good person. The main character, there's sometimes, well, whenever the story tries to push against that idea, it pushes in a way that just doesn't push the idea at all, because again, the main character just submits himself every time to the religious fanatic girl. He just doesn't have a backbone whenever he interacts with her. So again, the story, I don't even know what the story is trying to tell me. They're trying to tell me that, you know, religious fanaticism is good, actually, as long as you don't invade other countries. Is that what you're trying to tell me? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the story is trying to tell me. It's sending mixed messages here. It's really not going anywhere, really, with this analysis. So it's just a terrible analysis of religion at all. Overall, I mean, also, the whole Lusitanian army that are the fanatic army is interesting, because they, there's this whole hypocritical thing about, you know, them wanting to free the slaves in the main region. The main reason why the girl hates Ars, it's because they have slavery, and that they believe everyone is born equal and slavery is evil. Well, at the same time, they say that enslaving people is actually good, because they're not of the same religion, so they're subhumans, so they should be enslaved, actually. Slavery is good, is it bad? I guess the point is to show that they're hypocrites, sure. But come on, man, at least the zealous characters should not be contradicting themselves. Yes, the leaders maybe should, because they don't really believe in any of that anyway, and they're just using it for their own benefit. But the zealous characters absolutely should believe in it and not support that at all. Like, it's such a heavy-handed way of dealing with all of this. There's no nuance in the slightest, man. Just terrible, terrible, terrible. Really, really bad. And then there's the villain. The villain himself actually started as an interesting character, and ends up becoming worse and worse, and more and more generic. I can't talk a lot about the villain, because I'll have to reveal spoilers for the story. The antagonist, the masked man. He starts off as interesting, pragmatic, dangerous, and the more time goes on, the more pathetic he ends up looking, honestly. The attempts to humanize him just make him feel more pathetic, really, and less intimidating. There's also a magic subplot, which I guess there's magic in the world. Why? I mean, I don't know. That is magic, I guess. And only the Persians actually have magic. None of the other countries have any magic. But very, very convenient that they're the only ones with magic powers. And then there's talking about the villain, there's a very interesting scene where, you know, one of the friends of the villain is being executed. The villain is nowhere to be seen. The antagonist is nowhere to be seen. I mean, she's being executed in the capital. The villain is nowhere to be seen. I mean, he's never even shown to be near the capital in the slightest. He's out and about doing his own thing. and yeah, a friend of his is actually going to be executed in the capital. And right before she's executed, Phil, the antagonist, comes bursting through the city gates, runs without ever being stopped, jumps on top of the execution site, gets the girl, and leaves. How did he know that the girl was being executed? How did he even get there on time? Like, hello? How in the world did they find that out? Was he just waiting nearby for his chance and saw everything happening? Like, what is going on here? This is, once again, another one of those jobs of extreme convenience that you don't even... I mean, again, it's a cool scene. The guy came in and saved the girl. When you think about it, it makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely zero sense. But yeah, I mean, I guess I already rambled for who knows how long. Overall, enjoyment, honestly, all of this compiled really derailed the enjoyment I had from this series. Honestly, I'd say the first season I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It has a lot of problems. Overall, I can't just say that it was not boring. It wasn't boring. It definitely was. Always keeping itself fresh, I guess. It didn't really give you a lot of downtime. So at the very least you had that going for you. It didn't really feel boring. So second season though definitely felt boring, felt like a complete filler season with nothing of value being accomplished. And that one I would give it a 5 out of 10 in terms of rating. Genuinely a really bad story. And yeah, now that I finished this long ass review, who knows how much time I spent here. Let me see. How long did I spend talking about this? Damn, 1 hour. I really rambled a lot, huh? And probably didn't even say anything of worth of note, huh? I just said some random dumbass stuff. I guess that's fine. I'm gonna talk about another anime that I finished recently. This one is a lot more laid back. Not exactly a serious anime at all. The title is, you know, as you'd expect from Isekai, a complete mess. Like, there's no subtlety anymore on titles. Like, the titles nowadays are basically an abstract. It's like these authors don't know the difference between a title and an abstract. I know actually why they do this, is to basically get as much tags on that title as possible, to make it as identifiable as possible in the places they're published. But come on, man. The title of this is Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill Season 2. I actually watched the season. It's actually a pretty decent anime despite the title. For what it is, I might add, for what it is. Don't expect a profound story here, because it's not that at all. In fact, I can tell you right now that, you know, the plot is non-existent. There's no plot here. It's just the main character roaming around the world. Going from city to city. The art style is actually decent. It's generic, but it's a generic with a little bit of a flair of uniqueness, I'd say. But it's decent. It's still kind of like a generic isekai art style, but it's different enough, let's say. Also, I just noticed that I did not do anything. I cannot focus myself on the game and what I'm trying to say here. I'm just walking on circles here. I guess I'll play after I finish stream. I guess I can play, but I can't really comment on a lot of stuff here. Guess I can keep streaming a little bit while I play. Actually no, because I know that I'm gonna die a lot, so I'd rather hide the shame without being on stream, because then the controls of this game are horrific, man. Oh, I guess you'll have to wait for my review of this GTA 3 remaster. They're absolutely toxic. Like, they were already bad in the original. Like, in this game, they're absolutely horrible. Damn, man. But yeah, back to the anime. Yeah, the plot is non-existent. The art style is, again, decent. It's average. It's slightly above average, I'd say. It's still very generic. I mean, most anime are very generic. At least the one thing that I actually like is, you know, the wolf actually feels a little bit unique. The color scheme of the wolf and the design. But the rest of the characters, the human characters, just feel completely generic. Animation is decent overall, though there's not really a lot of animation. And especially, it's the anime's benefit that there's not a lot of fights, because the animation quality drops dramatically when there's fight scenes. The fight scenes are terrible. They really don't feel fluid in the slightest. They feel stiff. The characters barely move. It's always awkward as hell when there's a fight scene. Luckily for you, there's basically like 3 fight scenes in the entire show. That involve the main character anyway. With his pets, the only thing they do is basically spam magic, so there's nothing really crazy there either. So with magic, I guess it's easier to just go ahead and make still images work. You don't need to animate as much. Yeah, the characters are acceptable. The main character works for what it's supposed to be. The same with the side characters. And the comedy is actually decent. You're gonna get a few laughs here and there. The main thing about this anime, though, is clearly to be an anime to relax to. It's not anything that you're gonna be sinking your teeth into. Just gonna sit back, watch, relax, have a few laughs, get hungry because of the food that is cooked in here, which is good actually. It's one decent part about it is you get some decent recipes if you want to try them out. Very Japanese heavy as usual. These guys, like, they make a ton of Japanese recipes. They don't really venture a lot outside of Japanese cuisine. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna get hungry anyway. And it's gonna be pretty nice to relax and sit back and relax. There's not really anything to analyze here, to be honest. Just basically decent. Decent. It was fun. You're not gonna feel bored. You're not gonna feel angry. You're not gonna feel annoyed. It's just fun. Which again is one very important aspect that a lot of people, anime, manga, games, a lot of times forget that the story needs to be fun. Actually, fun is very important, especially with games. Fun is basically completely removed from modern games, but that's for another time. Right? It's fun to watch. Quick, I mean, probably gonna be able to watch this entire thing in a single afternoon, like I did. Actually, I didn't. I watched it in 2 days. Yeah, I know, jobless behavior, but yeah, it's just a fun anime to watch. I'd recommend. Again, you're not gonna see a masterpiece of storytelling. It's fun. I don't have much else to say about this. There's really not a lot to say about this anime, so I gave it a 7 out of 10. Maybe a 7.5 out of 10. The food does look good, I'm not gonna lie. I think it gets a bit repetitive. The whole, you know, oh, this is so good, this is so delicious, being said basically 10 times in a row. I think it gets a bit old. Seeing the same line over and over again every episode after the main character cooks a meal, like. Also, I mean, I'm starting to get really tired of the word umami now. Like, they use umami to describe absolutely everything. I mean, this is like the new hipster word that, you know, foodies like to use to pretend that they know what they're talking about. Umami, everything is umami now. It started getting really annoying, the whole umami stuff, but yeah, overall pretty fun. I recommend watching. And I think that's it. I actually watched another anime, not this week, but last week. I finished Lives. That one I'd like to make another hour long. That one is actually really good anime, especially if you like a more philosophical anime. It's a more philosophical anime and a more cryptic way of storytelling. You're really gonna like that one. Also, it's basically nihilism, the anime, so if you're into that, I'd recommend watching. It's called Lives. It's really not watched by a lot of people. But I think it's one of those that is basically alongside Serial Experiment Lane, really an anime that only usually elitists bring up. But yeah, it's very interesting. I think you should check it out. I mean, it's not exactly the happiest anime ever. It's fairly depressing, actually. So be prepared for that if you're gonna watch it. But yeah, I think that's it for this stream. I think I said all I had to say about Arslan Senki. I guess I'm probably gonna start doing more streams like this, especially right after I finish the anime. I actually ended up waiting a little bit, so stuff was not as fresh on my mind anymore. So I finished this a while ago already. The cooking one was the one I actually finished very recently, so I guess I can start doing this as well, since, you know, sometimes whenever I just don't want to post anything, I don't want to play any games, or I don't want anyone seeing me getting annihilated in GTA 3 doing some random rampage. This garbage, man. Well, I'm gonna absolutely flame the hell out of Rockstar in my review of Grand Theft Auto, the definitive edition. So you can wait for that. I'm gonna flame them to hell. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stop the stream here. So if you like this review, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe, hit the bell button, so you don't miss any of my streams that come out, one in 2 weeks, I guess. Once every 2 weeks. But yeah, see you on the next one.